Hi, my name's Emily Beckman Bruns. I'm a research associate at Botanic Gardens Conservation International US and a research assistant at the Morton Arboretum. And I'm excited to speak today about using our global list of exceptional status to inform strategic conservation action. I'm going to start by zooming out. So, World Flora Online has about 305,000 accepted seed-bearing plant species currently. And Q's State of the World's Plants and Fungi estimates that 2 in 5 of the world's plant species are threatened with extinction. We also have estimations of the number of exceptional species globally. Here's predicted species to have desiccation sensitive seeds. It's about 8%. And we also have a little wider prediction for seeds that are short-lived in conventional seed bank conditions, anywhere in the tens of thousands. So the minimum estimate is the darker yellow and then a maximum, the lighter yellow. And there are no current predictive models for the other types of exceptionality that Valerie introduced, seeds unavailable or deep dormancy. So we know that efficient plant conservation is vital, with this 2 in 5 plants estimated to be threatened with extinction. And for exceptional species, we also know that successful ex situ conservation requires specialized expertise and facilities, such as cryopreservation, in vitro propagation, and botanical gardens and arboreta. The first step in meeting these challenges of the number of threatened species globally and the challenges in conserving exceptional species is first to identify which species are exceptional and also the specific strategy or strategies to best conserve them. So our start towards this challenge is the first global working exceptional status list. And the manuscript is in preparation currently. So today we'll get a sneak preview of some of our results. So first, what is the exceptional status list? It's a compilation of exceptionality data for each species, and then we use that information to determine an exceptional status, which for this purpose, we've defined 4 different categories. There's exceptional, non-exceptional, probably not exceptional, and insufficient data. To create the exceptional status list, we first started with a few raw data sources. There's the Seed Information Database, also called SID, from Royal Botanic Gardens Kew, which has a huge amount of seed storage behavior and storage condition data, more than 26,000 records. And then we also did some targeted literature review that included some independent papers for specific species, but also 2 larger data sets, including Hawaiian species and threatened North American species. And finally, we got some expert input on deeply dormant species. And this literature review and expert input together was about 1,500 records. Next, we assigned the exceptional status based on the seed storage behavior category from SID. It's recalcitrant, intermediate, orthodox, or uncertain. So we had certain designations for those categories. We also did an automated word search of the seed storage descriptions. So the keywords included looking for things like short-lived, freeze-sensitive, desiccation sensitive, or dormant. And we did a word search for some other specific quantitative values like time in storage, storage temperature, initial viability, and final viability. And then finally, we manually reviewed any records that had an indication of exceptionality from the 2 previous points. The methods were pretty involved and the details will be available soon in the manuscript, but for now, I'll move straight to results. So in total, the exceptional status list, we had data for over 23,000 or 8% of species, over 4,000 or 20% of genera, and 303 or 70% of the known families. And just to note that for this initial list, we only looked at seed-bearing species and followed the World Flora Online 2019 backbone to calculate the percents for species, genera, and families. Looking at how the species were broken out into their exceptional status, we had 775 exceptional species, over 3,000 categorized as non-exceptional, nearly 2,000 categorized as probably non-exceptional, and the vast majority, over 17,000, we categorized as having insufficient data to currently put them in a different category. So zooming back out and comparing to these predictions that I showed at the beginning, the 8% for the desiccation sensitive and anywhere in the tens of thousands for predicted short-lived, and a reminder that we don't have models for the other two types yet. We're going to compare this to where we are currently with the exceptional status list. So the bright red sliver right at the top is the 775 species that we categorized as exceptional, which is anywhere from 0.3 to 2% of the predicted exceptional species based on the models. And then we also have the insufficient data and non-exceptional and probably non-exceptional. For the 775 exceptional species, we also separated them into 4 exceptionality factors that align with the 4 different parts of the flowchart that Valerie shared in her talk, the 4 different ways that a species can be exceptional. So we have EF1, which is seeds unavailable, exceptionality factor 2, desiccation sensitivity, 3 is short-lived, and 4 is deep dormancy. So these can be used to target specific ways that the species can be conserved. So specific actions that will be most helpful to addressing the challenges for long-term storage of the species. So when we break out the exceptional species into these 4 exceptionality factors, most of them are desiccation sensitive, followed by short-lived, then seeds unavailable, and deep dormancy. And we may expect that the short-lived will increase and overtake the desiccation sensitivity, that number of species in the future as we get more information, but it makes a lot of sense that desiccation sensitive species are the best understood because that definition of that type of exceptionality is the most known currently. We also aligned our exceptional status list to some additional databases to get more information about the species and how to best conserve them. We have taxonomic information from World Flora Online, threat status from the IUCN Red List and BGCI's Threat Search, country level native distribution and woodiness from the Red List and Global Tree Search, and representation in ex situ collections from Plant Search. So I'm going to go through each of these databases and talk about how we can characterize exceptional species based on this additional information. First, there were 111 families on the exceptional in the 775 exceptional species. 30% of the species were in these top 6 families that you can see highlighted here. There were 366 genera represented in the exceptional species list, and you can see the top 5 here and the number of species in each. Looking at extinction risk from the IUCN Red List, nearly 2/3 of exceptional species have been assessed on the Red List, and almost half of those that have been assessed are threatened with extinction. This is compared to non-exceptional species that are on our list. So only a little more than a fourth have been assessed on the Red List, and about a seventh of those are threatened. Looking at native distribution of threatened exceptional species, this is a heat map that shows the number of native threatened exceptional species in each country. You can see that there are 2 hotspots popping out. There's the United States, which is majority Hawaiian species that are driving that number, and then also in South and Southeast Asia. And it's possible that some other hotspots will emerge as more data is gathered. These are maybe slightly skewed from the species that we had exceptional data on, and also the species that are assessed on the Red List. We also have information for woodiness of exceptional species. About 3/4 of the species had data, and the vast majority, as you can see, are woody species so far on our list. This is compared to non-exceptional species, where much fewer species had data, but those that did, it was also a smaller percent of species that were woody compared to exceptional. And finally, representation in ex situ collections. This is a histogram of the number of collections reporting germplasm is on the x-axis, and on the y is the number of exceptional species. There were 87 species on our exceptional list that are not represented at all in ex situ collections. And the majority of species are in 1 to 4 ex situ collections. We also broke down these ex situ collections into specific types. So living plants represent the most number of species in collections, followed by seed banks, uncategorized, and then the bottom two are there's only 78 species in tissue culture and 9 known to be in cryopreservation. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about the data gaps and limitations. So the data are non-standard. There were differing methodologies, types of data reported, and phrases used in the reporting, which made it really difficult to interpret the data in a standard way and to assign an exceptional status. There were also biases in the species studied. Economically important species and relatives are often studied for exceptionality or for seed banking. Also, most species especially in SID, have been targeted for seed banking, so they're more likely to be orthodox. And finally, our expert consultation focused on North American and Hawaiian species, so those are also more represented in our list. Some priorities and strategies moving forward. We need more data. We need seed behavior research that's presented in a standard way for more species, and especially in biodiversity hotspots. There's some great momentum in this direction. There's technical information sheets from Millennium Seed Bank Partnership and guidelines for best practices in seed storage, for example, from the FAO guidelines. And both of these are great steps in continuing to get more standard data on species exceptionality. And we also need more data from ex situ collections, specifically on the genetic diversity that's captured there, like which populations are captured and the number of maternal lines. We also need facilities and expertise, tissue culture and cryobanks especially. We found that only 10% of exceptional species are in tissue culture and only 1% are in cryobanks. And we know that these are some of the best ways to store exceptional species for long periods of time. We also need a variety of experts, field botanists for species ID and collection, seed biologists for evaluating seed storage characteristics, researchers in vitro, cryo, and conservation horticulture for storing, propagating, and recovering plant tissues. We also need capacity, especially in biodiversity hotspots. We know that only a third of botanical gardens are in biodiversity hotspots, but many hotspots are tropical with large numbers of exceptional plants. And finally, we need coordination. Plant conservation and botanical garden networks are vital to this effort. For example, the Center for Plant Conservation, the Australian Network for Plant Conservation, and Botanic Garden Conservation International. And of course, the Exceptional Plant Conservation Network, which I'm sure you'll hear more about this week. Also, meta collections for collaboratively managing ex situ collections. There's the Global Conservation Consortia, which Dan will talk about next, and the Millennium Seed Bank Partnership, which are both really great starts in this direction. So, understanding the challenge is the first step in meeting it. And we need to identify exceptional species and the specific strategy to best conserve each. Our start is the Global Working Exceptional Status List. A big thank you to our funders, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and also the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden crew for their institutional and coordination support. Thank you to the organizations that also provided data for us to use with our exceptional list, the World Flora Online, the IUCN Red List, Botanic Gardens Conservation International, and Royal Botanic Gardens Kew. And finally, a huge thanks to all of my colleagues, additional authors on our manuscript that's in preparation. So I hope that this presentation has inspired you to take on this challenge of exceptional species with us using your specific expertise and resources. Thank you.